Hi, my name is Mary, food blogger over at goodygodmother.com, and I am here today to share with you the first of several videos on how to build a Doctor Who themed Tardis cake. So we're going to begin by torting and assembling our first cake layers. So I've already cut, torting means you're cutting a cake into multiple layers. So you could take this, level it out, and put it right on a cake. But you can also slice this into two to give your cake a little more height, which we want for a Tardis cake. So that's called torting, and that's what we're going to do today. So I'm going to start. I have a basic leveler that I really hope to upgrade within the year to a fancy one, but a basic one will do. So I am setting it to 4. These layers were baked in Wilton 6-inch square pans. You'll see we're going to have to trim down the sides a bit because the Wilton square pan sides bow out, and I don't like that. So I'm actually going to replace them with a different brand linked to in my blog post. But it'll work if that's what you have on hand. So this is the dome. We're going to remove this. We don't need that. The cut was uneven. So we're going to go ahead and fix that. So these cakes, I baked them earlier, wrapped them well, and chilled them. Cakes are just easier to cut and carve when they are well chilled. So I would recommend planning ahead. You really don't want to be trying this with a hot cake. It will fall apart. So adjusting down and then holding my cake steady, bringing my cutter, making sure it's level, and then I'm just kind of gently sawing back and forth until the wire cuts through the cake. You can also do this with a serrated knife if you don't want to use a cake leveler. Just make sure that you keep the knife very even. And you're good. Alright, so with this cake, I am actually going to brush the layers with some simple syrup. Simple syrup is 1 part sugar to 1 part water, and you just melt it down. I'm brushing the layers with simple syrup because it takes about 2 days to assemble this cake, and you're going to want to make sure that your layers don't dry out in the meantime. You want a nice, fresh tasting, delicious cake. It's also a fun way to play with flavor. This is just a classic simple syrup. It's not infused with anything on a plain vanilla cake, but you can kind of go crazy and infuse a lot of different flavors. I have a recipe for a ginger simple syrup on my blog that I've used with vanilla cake, and it's fantastic. So feel free to get creative. But this helps to lock in moisture and keep your cake from drying out, because you're going to have to refrigerate it and work with it and refrigerate it and then work with it several times to get all the coating and covering. So I only have to brush my simple syrup on my cut sides, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stack my cakes, set them aside for just a moment, and use a clean damp paper towel to just kind of wipe off my work surface so I don't dirty my cake board when I place it onto my work area. Alright, get rid of that. So here I have some 6-inch square cake boards. I cut these down from a larger cake board that I had on hand, and I'm going to go ahead and start stacking and filling these cakes. So I have 4 layers, and I actually have a total of 8 layers. This is one cake recipes, so if you were making from like a box mix, you would fill 2 square cake pans. If you were making from scratch, you would get this yield from about 1.5 times the recipe for a 6-inch round cake. Or you can just make your regular 8-inch round cake recipe and you might have extra for about 2 cupcakes. So whatever makes you happy, go for it. So we're going to start by just placing the first layer down, and I really want to have a lot of height, which is why I cut this into 4 layers, because the Tardis cake is quite tall to give it a more realistic look. So that's what we're going for. And I'm going to fill today's cake with Nutella and cover it with ganache. And you'll see why I love using ganache later on. Ganache is a very sturdy covering under fondant. It holds up really well. You can use a buttercream too, but buttercream tends to come to room temperature a lot faster than ganache, and so you might end up having to work out a few more lumps and bumps. And you don't really want to do that. So there we go. Good. So this is my dam that I created so my filling doesn't come out, and I am just going to scoop about 1/4 cup of Nutella in here. You don't really have to measure it out. It's just a good way to make sure that you have an even amount between each layer. With this here, it might hop about a little bit on your cake board. Actually, I really need to be using a spatula. Thankfully, it didn't get any crumbs on it. So I'm going to use my offset spatula instead. Much better. And if you're using a really thick filling like this, can I tell you, now that I'm doing this, I would probably warm the filling a little, since you're going to have to chill this cake. Actually, I'm about to go do that. Yeah, let me go do that and then we'll be back. All right, let's try this again. So as you can see, cold cake and Nutella don't really blend very well when it comes to spreading things evenly. So now my Nutella is nice and warm. It kind of looks like a chocolate pudding. Took about 10 seconds in the microwave. So I'm gonna go ahead, pipe my dam, and I'm trying to make the cake as even as possible, but if for some reason it's not like 100% even, that's fine. We can fix that later. So I measured out about 1/2 cup of Nutella, so I'm going to use half of it here. Whee. Much better. That goes on so easily. Corners. The nice thing about this is not only is this cake going to look really amazing and have beautiful height because of all the layers, but it's going to look gorgeous when you cut into it. And it's going to taste fantastic. So, put one more layer down. And you can already see the height starting to build quite nicely. There is another set of 4 layers that I'm going to assemble later. And we're going to stack that set on top of this set. So the cake is actually going to be about 1 foot high, making it a really impressive showpiece for your Doctor Who party. the top of the spoon. There we go. And place my top layer on here. And this looks good. I'm gonna chill this cake right now because as you can see, the edges are not 100% straight, and that is because, like I said, the Wilton pans have edges that bow, the sides that bow out, which I don't even know why they decided to do that. But anyway, I'm gonna chill the cake right now, and then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna carve off all the little brown sides, and then we will crumb coat it and let it set before we get to covering the cake in ganache to get some really nice sharp corners to act as a good base for our fondant.